Hey everyone, you're welcome back to Data Gym Center. In the last tutorial we talked about how to treat your data set in Excel, what not to do and what to do, and there we created some sheets or some data set that we promise to import into SAS in the next tutorial, which is this very tutorial. So yeah, today I will mention macro briefly, and then in subsequent tutorials I think we are going to be treating macro in detail. So this is just a gentle introduction to macro. So the macro is just in most of what we've done so far are programs that we write to make our lives easier. What I meant to say is this: for instance, this let macro that we have here is just a straightforward macro statement that simply assigns a value to the macro variable. So it is a macro variable. This is the value it assigns to it. What we are saying is this: it's saying that anywhere you mention this macro variable in this current SAS session, it will recognize it as this, okay? And anywhere you mention data in this current SAS session, it will recognize it as this dataset iris, okay? So, and macros have two parts, constitute two components, and one of the components is the macro variables, variables, which we've used a couple times already. It is followed by this ampersand. This is an example of a macro variable, okay? So it's followed by an ampersand. And then we have the macros themselves that are usually followed by the percent sign, okay? The percent sign. And remember, in one of our tutorials on what not to do, SAS naming conventions, I told you not to start the name of a data set or the variable name with an ampersand or a percent sign, because they are reserved for something special in SAS, and this is macro, okay? And the macro statement is in this format. First, you have to call the macro, declare the macro, and then you end the macro, and you can add whatever you want to do within these, between these statements, the macro and the mend. So mend is macro and m is macro, and the end is this where the macro ends, okay? And yeah, that's what it is. So here, the conventional method to actually import those numbers of sheets, let's open this data no. So let's open this data set. It's taking some time to open. So okay, here we have it. So we have our iris, which is our original data set that we duplicated to this number of sheets. So I just want to show you how to import data set from a number of sheets. So of the iris, you have the iris underscore 1 up to iris underscore 4. Conventional way to import, the conventional method would be for you to import, call the proc import step multiple times, corresponding to the number of sheets or data set that you want to import, okay? In this case, we have 5 data sets, so we will have proc import for iris sheets, proc import for the iris underscore 1. So let's run this and import the data set for that. So you see, import unsuccessful, something is wrong somewhere, so let's go back and fix it. So we are coming here to run this step again. Okay, I know what is wrong, because this our data set is still open, so it needs to be closed, okay, for it to run without any problem. So now let's run it again. Okay, our iris is imported, and the reason I didn't change this in the Excel, if you can remember, from this dot to underscore, is for me to show you how SAS treats it, and it tells you very clearly here that the variable name change. Okay, the separ dot length has been changed to separ underscore length, and that is what it does too. So if you have a space before this separ, it will be underscore separ underscore length. Okay, so that is why it is good that you have a consistent naming convention or structure in Excel. Okay, so the first data set is imported, so we can just drag through every of these data set to import the remaining ones. Okay, so let's check. We see that they are all imported, so they have all changed. They are all changed. Okay, so we need a data step here to combine all these data set that were created into a singular data set, to just one single large data set. Okay, so we have data step, the data, and we want the name of the new data set or table we're creating to be iris all, and then we have all these data set to be combined or to be appended in that order, and then we run, and then we can print. I'm just going to be running the entire step here. The print is going to print everything, because I just comment this one out, this number of observations, because I want to see my hundreds, 1000, I want to see my 2000s, and that tells me that that data set is imported. Okay, because we have the same, they are all the same data set. I just change a single column there, a single cell there, just to identify the sheet. Okay, so let's run the entire code. So now we have this data set imported. So for us to know if we've successfully imported our excuse me our iris underscore 1, we have to go to 151, the 151st observation. So we have 1000. That is fine. It means our iris underscore 1 is imported. So let's go to 301. Remember, they are 150, so the first one will be 150, the next one will be 300, and then the next data set will start from 301. That's why I'm going. So okay, yeah, iris underscore 2, and then it's 451 will be iris underscore 3, and then the last one will be 601 iris underscore 4. Okay, that's fine, that's perfect. So we've successfully imported our data set. So if we go through this step again, we know that we have it start from here 39 all the way through 84. So that's a lot. So that's a lot of data steps. So how many lines of code? So you can figure that one out. So what we want to do is that we don't want to repeat this step, and we can just simply add this and this into the macro, using the macro for one of these, and just using this alone, and then wrapping the macro around one of these, and then we can get the job done. Okay, so that's the essence of this macro. Okay, so to start our macro now, we need to just use the macro name. I just copy this one down here, paste it here. Just watch what will happen. The color will change, except these, I guess. Yeah, these will remain the same. Yeah, that doesn't mean there's an error. It means I'm just using the macro. Okay, just watch. So see, the color has changed from the blue that I used to know to this. Okay, let me go back. I guess I did something wrong some way. Here we have our run, Okay, so now I can put my macro here again, and then that's fine. And then I copy my macro end, which is the macro ends here, and I just leave a space for something else. And this is all what I have to write right now, except that I need to change the name of the macro to iris import. You can just give it any name you want, and we want to set a parameter called sheet. Okay, and then here is the same thing as going to be the same thing as this, so we're going to be this. Okay, this is the same. So we have set it. So what this step does is it loops through whatever you're supplying it here. So which means you don't need too many proc steps to get that job done. Okay, you only need to supply the sheet that you want it to import for you. Okay, so here we have a sheet which is our parameter, in this case, which is our macro variable. We have to add it here, and to add it we need an ampersand and the sheet. Okay, what we're saying here is that when I invoke the macro later on that I will specify here, when I invoke the macro, I'm going to supply you the sheet that you should or that you need to import. This is just a placeholder, just to run everything, but down here I'm going to tell you what sheet to import. Okay, don't be afraid. Just relax and I'll tell you what to do next. Okay, so this is the entire step. So but what this step does is that there is no way for you to add up your data set, because if you run the iris here and you run iris_1, the data set that it will create, the current data set will be the current sheet that you run. Okay, there is no way for you to add all the data set together to produce a unitary or maybe one single large data set. Okay, which will pretty much replicate what we have in the conventional method. That is not what we want. We want our life to be easier and simpler. Okay, for us to do that, we need to add another statement here. So we have a proc, another line of code here called proc append. Okay, the procedure is called append, and then we need a base data set. Okay, and we need data which equals the we will supply it later, and we will need to say false, and then we need to say quit. Okay, so this proc append is what does the combining or appending for us. So it takes the first data set, which it uses as the base here, and then builds on that, use that as a foundation to add the other data set. Okay, that is reasonable. So for us to get that data, the base, we need to first run a different proc step, okay, to create that, and that is we are going to just run the that step to create the data from the sheet iris only. Okay, and the other subsequent sheets will be from sheet iris_1 to iris_4 will be added onto that first one, iris. So for us to do that, I will just run this. I will just copy this step here and come here. Okay, I put it here. Okay, now it's just as simple as this. So we just need to change the name of the sheet to iris, because that's what it is, and then when we run this, we should have our iris data imported. Okay, that is the iris data that we want. But the point is this: since we're going to be using it as the base, why not just rename this to iris_base? Okay, that makes it a little easier for us to follow and a little more reasonable. So now we have a data set for our iris, for our base, which is the same one that we have here. So this is going to be the building, the foundation upon which to add whatever you are going to be creating here. Okay, I guess that is fine. So let's run it. Okay, let's first clear whatever we have here, and then let's run this step. We should know it should tell us that our iris base is imported, so as 850 observations. Okay, iris base was successfully created, and 150 observations and 5 variables. That's pretty much what we want, so we need it as a base. So here, what data do we have? What do we have here as data? That will be the iris, which is what we will be creating here on the go. Okay, so this is pretty set now. First we have the macro, and then we have the parameter that we set to add, because that is what is variable in this data set now. I think one of the but that's what we want to actually focus on. So we have the sheet, and then we declare it here as a ampersand sheet, and then we run the proc append to combine our data set as they are being produced on the go. So for us to run this, for this to be complete, we need to invoke or call the macro. Okay, to invoke the macro, we need to add the percent sign, and then we need to add the parameter that we want to. So this is the parameter. Remember, the parameter is the sheet, so this is the name of the sheet. I think we should have said sheet name or sheet. I think it's reasonable too, so sheet is fine. So what's this first sheet we're going to be importing here? Remember, we imported the iris here, so the first sheet, the next sheet we'll be importing will be iris underscore 1. Okay, and we just need to copy this over and just enter, just paste and paste here. Then here will be 2, here will be 3, here will be 4. Okay, that is understandable. So this means we have asked this iris, which is pretty much wrapping this entire step, that when we import, the only thing that is variable here is this. When we import the, and when we supply you this, run this step for me and generate a data set that you will add to this data set here, iris underscore base. Okay, now we can just everything is set, so we can just run the first data set, which is the first sheet, which is iris underscore 1. So we can so check the log. So when you check the log, you realize that our data set here, our observations here, has increased to 300. Why? That is understandable and that is expected, because remember what we did here. We already have a base, which is the iris data set, which is about 150 observations. So if we are supplying this, if we are importing this, the next sheet or the second sheet, which is also 150, 150 plus 150 should be 300. Okay, that is why we have our 300 here. Okay, so any additional sheet you had will be adding 150 observations. Okay, so let's add this. Our observation should be 450. Okay, and then the next one here should be 600. Okay, yeah, and then the next one should be 750. That's fine. Okay, we have 750 observations. That is the total number of observations that we have for the entire data set. Okay, so now we have a massive data set called iris base, which is a data set we built from adding all the sheets that we have in our Excel file. Okay, now we can print the entire data set to just look at it the same way we look at the previous method, conventional method, and see. So the 150 first observation will be the iris underscore 1, the 301 will be iris underscore 2, and in that order. So we should have from 600 on 1, we should have a iris underscore 4. Okay, that's fine. So let's go over what we did here again. Remember, by simply using the macro, we'll reduce the number from 22 I think we have from 22 to 43, which is about 22 lines, thereabout, about 21 lines of code. We've reduced it from 56 to where is it? 56 to here 98. So you know what that means. So we've reduced the lines of code by half by using the macro. Okay, so what the macro does is to wrap this step. We've created the first step, the first data set that we use as the base or as the foundation for this step to be built upon. So you supply this, and then you have this that is created anytime you run any of these code here. So this is created and is added almost immediately to this. Okay, so remember, it starts with your Excel. Remember what I told you in the last tutorial, that you don't need to mess up your data set in Excel. No formula, nothing whatsoever. You can do all those calculations in SAS. Okay, right within SAS. You can do everything within SAS. Okay, and be careful to ensure that you have consistent naming convention. Your naming should be the same, consistent. So if you use data, it should be data underscore. If you use data for the first sheet, it should be, or every other sheet should have that data as well, on data underscore 1, data underscore week 1, or whatever you want to name it. Okay, that we have a consistent naming convention for both your variable names as well as your sheet names. So that makes it easier for SAS to work with your Excel file. Okay, thank you for your time. If you love what we are doing and you want to support us and you want to be part of this journey with us, we want you to subscribe to our channel. It's Data Gym Center. Subscribe, and then always click on the notification bell. Why? Because that informs you anytime a new video is available, so that you'll be the first to watch it. Okay, also, if you want to contribute, if you want to make contributions or suggest something that will help us improve the videos, the tutorials, we gladly accept whatever you need to you want to contribute. Okay, I am a learner. I learn every day, so I would appreciate every opportunity that will present itself for me to learn. Okay, and if you have any question, just post it in the comment. Okay, I will respond as soon as possible, as early as I can, and then give you feedback. Okay, and if you have a data set you want us to talk about, you have anything you need us to talk about, I'm also available. Okay, so see you in the next tutorial. I hope you had a nice time in this tutorial. Okay, thank you very much.